On episode 740 of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Bill Gifford and discuss his book, Hot Wired: How the Hidden Power of Heat Makes Us Stronger. Welcome to the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, the largest and longest running health and fitness podcast dedicated to people over 40. Whether you're looking to lose weight, get stronger, or improve your health and age better, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Coach Allen, an online health and fitness coach and author of The Wellness Roadmap. Each week, we dive into practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and fitness. If you're ready to look, feel, and perform your best, no matter your age, this podcast is the perfect place to start. Let's get you on the path to a healthier, fitter, and more energetic version of yourself. I hope you'll join us each week, and together we can unlock your full potential. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast. I'm really glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here with you. I am your host, Coach Allen. Today, we're kind of a really cool conversation about heat and how it can make us better, stronger, faster, and healthier. So really good conversation. I do want to say, my recovery from the surgery is coming along quite well. I'm increasing my walking mileage each week. Still haven't started lifting, but as they say, and as I say often, we got to take the steps that we can take, and we got to move from where we are to get where we want to go. I do have a visit scheduled with my doctor in about a week's time. We'll go check in on him and see if everything's coming along the way it is, but I believe it is. And I'll have the staples taken out at that point, which be really good because I'm quite frankly itching like a maniac at this point, and I do not want to scratch at this point again because the infection, because healing, and because I've been told not to. But anyway, let's go ahead and get on with the interview. Our guest today is a veteran magazine writer and editor who writes about extraordinary athletes and cutting-edge health science. He is co-author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Outlive, which has sold more than 2 million copies, as well as the New York Times bestseller, Spring Chicken, Stay Young Forever or Die Trying. He is a longtime contributing editor at Outside, and his work has appeared in Wired, Bloomberg Businessweek, Men's Health, Bicycling, Slate, and others, as well as in the Best American Sports Writing. With no further ado, here's Bill Gifford. Bill, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thanks, Alan. Great to be here.
Now, the book is called Hot Wired: How the Hidden Power of Heat Makes Us Stronger. You talked about this a little bit because it was definitely a thing. Back in the 80s was the two-a-days in the Southeast. And if you were anybody, you wanted to be on the football team. And that meant, okay, it's late July, early August. Let's go out in the morning. Let's go out in the afternoon. Oddly enough, we would go out in shorts and T-shirts for the first week or two. And then you put the pads on, and there's a 1 week pads kind of get into them. And then there's what we called Hell Week, which is when the hitting really happened. And then that was when the people that didn't really want to be on the football team stopped being on the football team.
It's a weeding out process, right?
It was from the beginning, just the whole idea that you were going to show up for the afternoon practice in early August was pretty much the delineator of, okay, this person actually wants to do this. What we didn't know was what we didn't know about heat. A lot of us have probably experienced it and have heard, okay, well, you got to watch out for this, watch out for that. Heat is a dangerous, dangerous thing. There's good heat and there's bad heat. Could you talk just a little bit, kind of go into heat could be a good thing, but it can be a bad thing. So let's talk a little bit about that as a start.
Yeah. So I've met and spoken to people who came out on the wrong side of those two-a-days, of that weeding out process in American football practice, and almost died. Right. So I think we're understanding that now heat can be extremely dangerous, especially in certain contexts especially involving high levels of exertion, a lot of clothing, that kind of thing. But heat's a double-edged sword. Heat can injure or even kill us, but there's an emerging sort of strand of research, but also athletic knowledge that's understanding that heat can heal us potentially and potentially improve our performance. So it's really kind of a two-sided equation.
Okay. Well, I love spending a lot of time talking about the positive side of things.
Let's do that.
But I promise we are, but I do want to talk about the negative aspects of this, where this is going to come live in April. And particularly for folks that are down in the Southeast where I spent most of my time growing up, it's already starting to get warm, and it's already starting to get humid. And for a lot of that, we know we got to get ourselves there, but it's very easy to let yourself get on the other side of heat, particularly when it's weather related. And the core things we hear about are heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Can you talk a little bit about what those two things are? And then, basically how because I know it's hard as an individual, you're going through it to recognize it's happening, but kind of what we would need to do just to respect the heat.
Both of those conditions happen when your body temperature reaches a certain level and you start to struggle. Your body starts to struggle to cool you off, and that becomes especially difficult in a humid environment like the Southeast or like Washington, D.C., where I grew up playing the other kind of football. Mm-hmm. And so heat exhaustion is you're weak, you're a little confused, you're lethargic, you have like prickly sensations, you're not right. But it's not necessarily a life-threatening situation. Heat stroke is a very serious situation. And as your temperature goes up and up and up, you can so it's like confusion, it's like aggression, anger, you're out of your mind, and eventually your body, you pass out, your body can shut down, and a whole lot of bad things happen after that, because if you get hot enough, the proteins in your cells they start to come apart, and that gets really unpleasant. I spoke to a former University of Virginia football player whose core temp had gotten up to 109 Fahrenheit after the 2-a-day, day 4 of the 2-a-days. So that's a very serious situation. Often the sun is involved. It's not just heat, but it's like direct sun and a high level of exertion. So that's a dangerous situation. It's interesting. You talk about football. I went down to Georgia and looked at some measures that the high schools there had implemented to prevent situations like that. And they were really simple, starting with every high school has to have a big plastic tub like you could lie in, filled with water by the side of the field. So if anybody starts to have a heat illness or signs of an impending heat stroke, or even if they just pass out, you throw them in the tub, you dump a bunch of ice in, and you stabilize their temperature. It's really simple. As the director of the Corey Stringer Institute said, nobody has to die of a heat stroke if you take those precautions and have, those kind of safety procedures in place.
Yeah. And so I think that's important. But I think another thing that we'll get into this in a minute is there are other things that you can personally do to prepare yourself for the heat so that you're less likely to find yourself in that situation. But before we get into this, I want to flip the coin and let's talk about some of the good things that heat can do for us.
In the world of physiology and medicine, the conversation and the research had, up until about 15 years ago, had been entirely directed towards the dangers of heat, how to avoid heat illnesses, what kind of mitigation measures to take for athletes and for workers, all that kind of thing. But then some studies popped up of people who used Finnish sauna regularly, people in Finland. And it found that the people who used sauna the most actually were the healthiest, meaning they had the lowest risk. These were middle-aged guys, lowest risk of heart attacks, strokes, cardiovascular deaths, cardiovascular disease, all-cause mortality, all that kind of thing, cut in half or more by frequent sauna use. So it totally changed the conversation around heat, and people started to think like, maybe there's a good side, maybe there's a healing side to heat as well.
Yeah. One of the interesting things to me is obviously for a lot of us, we'll get a virus. And one of the natural things that our body does is it creates fever as a response. That's a healing thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
But then here we are trying to lower that fever.
Yeah. Not always necessary.
And in fact, they actually used fever as a way of dealing with, was malaria, right? Or syphilis. Yeah. As an actually healing protocol.
That was one thing.
Yeah.
But also cancer. There was a guy back in the late 19th century, I think it was, and he noticed, he was a cancer surgeon. Of course, cancer treatment was pretty primitive, but he had some patients who got these bacterial infections. And so they got pretty serious fevers. And a few of them, people who were destined for death, right? Terminal cases, they've been operated on multiple times. And in a couple of these cases, they got these fevers and then their cancer went away. It was crazy. That was the beginning of what we know as immunotherapy in cancer. And so we think about the immune system, but there's also some suggestion that it might have been the fever itself that played something of a role.
That it affected the cancer in a way.
Yeah,
I think you said in the book that it may have made the chemotherapy actually more effective.
Right. So then some later scientists in Germany specifically took this up and decided, okay, what if we, it's a crazy idea that, some doctor had, but what if we heated up cancer patients? They thought that it would somehow weaken the cancer cells and then make whatever treatment more effective. And this was used in Germany with some success for decades. So they would put patients in these sort of special tents and heat them up, through infrared. It was very unpleasant and uncomfortable. You're getting heated up to about 104 fever, which is rough.
Yeah.
And they had to be sedated to endure it and all this stuff. But, there were some positive results, but I think they abandoned it because it was too gnarly to go through. But it survives. The idea survives. They use focused ultrasound now. They're experimenting with it as an adjunct in cancer treatment. That's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah. Like I said, a lot of the science is just now coming around to this because once you realize something won't kill you, maybe there is an opportunity that makes you stronger.
Absolutely.
It's funny because so I was in Mississippi. I signed up to join the military to go infantry. And my sign-up date was September. And I was going to go to Georgia, Fort Benning, Georgia. And so I was in Mississippi. And I was like, I got to get myself and keep myself in shape so that when I go into the military, I'm ready to do this stuff. Little did I know, well, they were gonna get me fit whether I was or not. I didn't really need to do a lot, but being fit going in, it kind of made the transition a lot easier. But what I didn't realize what I was doing, because I was just used to training outside, running and just doing my stuff outside, that I was effectively acclimating myself to heat and humidity that then I would face in Georgia.
Yeah.
And it was kind of interesting because we're in basic training and there was a day and they said, well, it's too hot to train.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, we're infantry soldiers. Does the war just stop when it gets hot? Training did.
Well, yeah. I mean, the military knows a thing or two about heat.
They do, yeah. But it's that acclimation thing. And you did, I thought I did some crazy stuff. You did a bike ride. and you signed up for this bike ride well before you understood
knew what I was doing, I think.
Exactly what was going to be required. Can you talk a little bit about that bike ride, signing up for what it meant, what it taught you, at least as far as dealing with heat?
We can talk about heat acclimation too, but I think in February one year, I was, we had a cold winter. I live in Utah. Winters are kind of cold. I decided to sign up for this ride called the Hotter in Hell 100, which is held in Texas. And it's, middle of nowhere, Wichita Falls, Texas. It's actually a cool little town. And it's 100 miles, 100 degrees in August. You'd think, who would sign up for this thing? But it's actually legendary. Thousands of people come to this thing. Yeah, me. And a lot of these folks are from Texas, so they know what they're getting into. I'm pretty much a cold. I like winter, right? I like cold weather. So I realized that I was going to need some help to get adapted and heat trained. Actually, I didn't know how I was going to survive it. And so I found my way to the Corey Stringer Institute, which is at the University of Connecticut, named after a football player for the Vikings who passed away about 25 years ago. And they specialize in this kind of stuff. So they gave me a heat test, right? So they stuck me in this heat chamber, put me on a janky stationary bike, and had me pedal at like a pretty easy pace. And, about 15 minutes in, I'm thinking like I'm just about going to die right there, in my Lycra, just on the floor. It was so awful. I couldn't believe it. And there's a picture of me in the book where I look terrible. I flunked the heat test. Heat tolerance is a thing. You have a heat tolerance. And it sounds like when you went to Fort Benning, yours was developed, right? Just by being outside in Mississippi. Mine was not. It was early summer. And so here's a way to think about heat tolerance and heat adaptation. Think of like, let's say you have a hot day in May, right? Early May, it's like 80 degrees, 85 degrees. Feels super hot, right? Like it feels like you're kind of dying, right? I'm just picking that as a hypothetical example. So then think about the same day, let's say in Mississippi, right? You have a nice 80-degree day in early August. You're like, what a nice day.
Fall
is
great. Coming.
Right? Yeah. Ooh, it's a little chilly. So you become heat adapted, between May and August. And so heat training kind of tries to speed that process up so that ideally so that even the hotter than hell 100 doesn't feel that bad.
And the odd thing you brought up, and I thought I'm not going to say it was news to me, but I think it'll be news to a lot of people, is it's not something you think about, but sweating more is actually a symbol that you are better heat acclimated than sweating less. Most people think, well, once you're used to the heat, you would sweat less, but that's backwards.
Yeah. I'm on a little bit of a mission to rehabilitate sweat. I want to do some PR for sweat because sweating has kind of a bad rap. It's like considered gross. And I just talked to somebody who's just totally grossed out by the idea of getting all sweaty, like in a sauna. Socially unacceptable, except in certain circumstances like the gym, right? But sweating is actually really healthy. Yeah, sweating is a sign of good health. People who have difficulty sweating, often they can have a neurological condition like Parkinson's disease. They might be highly depressed. They might be suffering some effects of aging. All those things inhibit our ability to sweat. So we'll go back to heat adaptation. As you are exposed to heat in hot conditions, ideally in a controlled way, limited way, session after session, a few days of that, and your heat response changes. You start sweating sooner, actually. And that really surprised me. You sweat more. Your sweat actually becomes less salty. That means that when it appears on your skin, it can evaporate more easily. And it's that evaporation that carries away your body heat, right? Because we're like little furnaces inside. We're like little engines creating tons and tons and tons of heat. And that heat needs to go somewhere. And that's what sweat does. It carries that heat off in evaporation. So if you think about like getting out of the shower, you're a little bit wet. Shower is nice and warm. You hop out and all of a sudden you're a little bit chilly. That's what that is. That's evaporation. And it's tremendously powerful.
Yeah. Now, I was concerned reading the book that you were going to be a sauna snob based on some of the stories you told about sauna. I'm not going to get into the stories themselves, but as you started getting into the saunas, it seemed like, okay, this was not only an experience, it was a culture. And you kind of got into the culture and then you wanted to be a part of all of it. And so I was thinking, okay, is he going to give hot tubs and other heat related opportunities like hot yoga and whatnot an opportunity? And are we going to hear a little bit about infrared versus steam? And you did dive into this. So in full credit, you were impartial as a journalist.
I call him like I see him.
Still probably think that steam sauna is going to be your hands down favorite. But could you talk about each of these approaches to standard heat that most of us could experience wherever we live? And then generally which ones and how they would work and where we should apply them?
Sure. So we're transitioning from environmental heat exposure, which, is kind of not optional, to heat by choice. So people seeking out hot spaces, which it turns out humans have done for at least 10,000 years. We've gone into these hot, hot spaces, sweated our butts off, and generally been pretty happy about it. Like, as you can tell, because it's survived for so long. Earlier, I had talked about some studies about Finnish sauna users, right? And I think that has spurred a kind of a revival of sauna kind of worldwide that's quite incredible, from Japan to New York City to all around the United States. We have a bunch of sauna places that have popped up here in Salt Lake City, where I am, just in the last 2 years. Everywhere. England and Ireland are crazy for it, and so on and so on. There is a degree of snobbery. I mean, it's this ancient cultural tradition. It's very pure. It's very, if you think about the idealized image of sauna, it's this little shack by a lake, and it's got smoke coming from the chimney, and, lovely, attractive, maybe possibly naked people inside.
Let's hope.
And you're just hanging out and having a great time. I mean, what's not to love? It turns out, if you just you're talking about the physiology of it, all kinds of heat have similar heat or heat therapy. I'm not even sure what to call them.
Yeah, that was my question when I was thinking about how I was going to talk about this.
All of those heat modalities have similar effects, it turns out. So it could be a hot spring. It could be the plain old California hot tub. There's been research showing that even infrared sauna has been found to have benefits, especially for heart patients, and we'll talk about that. And even hot yoga has been found to have some certain health benefits. So I think it kind of doesn't matter. Hot baths, even. Like, if you don't have access to a sauna or a hot tub, heat is generally good across the board, which I think is good news. I think that's actually good news for the sauna snobs. I have an inner sauna snob, I won't lie. But it just tells you that there's something to it. It's not just a weird, specific, quirky finding. It's across the board. Targeted heat exposure can be good for you. And I'll explain why later if you want to get into that.
Yeah, my wife is funny because my wife bought this hot tub. We live in Panama, so the temperature never gets below 70 and never gets above 90. Very tight constraints on what temperature is Fahrenheit. 21 Celsius and 31 Celsius is like, that's our range. That's where we are every day. If it gets down to the lower end of that, we're cold. We're putting on sweaters.
Yeah.
Because we're acclimated to it being a bit warmer each day. But she has a hot tub and she has it set on 104 Fahrenheit. And so I hopped in there last night and I said, okay, just based on what I read from your book, I'm like, okay, we're in the right range. This is where I want to be. A good stay here of at least 15, maybe 20 minutes or so would be really good. And I was explaining to my wife, it's like, yeah, this is going to potentially help lower my blood pressure. It has other health benefits, but it's good to know there's like, a hot tub can be as effective, or at least, because again, I'm not going to find a steam sauna here on the island I'm on, but a good hot bath or a good hot tub, or even sometimes doing yoga during the afternoon in some places that don't have air conditioning. I'm putting myself in a similar situation if it's controlled and I'm safe about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're elevating your core body temperature, which is kind of what it's all about. That's where those heat adaptations I've talked about start to happen. In the studies, it's like 101 Fahrenheit. And that's when, the heat adaptations start happening. And also these things called heat shock proteins, which I'm sure you've heard about. They're like little maintenance proteins that kind of take care of the other parts of your cells and clean up waste and sort of protect your DNA, all that kind of good stuff. They're activated in response to stress like heat, and they protect you from stress, including heat.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool how like our biology responds to the stresses we put on it. So like exercise, and you talk all the time about exercise, right?
Yeah.
You lift heavy weights, and that doesn't deplete your ability to lift heavy weights. It actually increases your ability to lift even heavier weights. It's amazing. Or you run a distance, and that enhances your ability to run even farther the next time.
That's one of the beautiful things about the human body is our ability to adapt to what we're exposed to, provided we give our body what it needs. I mean, obviously we can overdo it, and obviously we can keep doing it and it's not going to get there. But as long as we're giving our body the nutrition, the rest, the recovery, the opportunity, it's going to improve and adapt to the new environment, and we've been doing that for the whole time that there's been a human, and even probably before, there's been adaptation. And so that's one of the beautiful things about the human body. And it's really cool to know, okay, some of these, like you said, I can't call them therapies, but I can just say, you're going to enjoy sitting in a hot tub. You're going to enjoy sitting in a sauna. And particularly in some of the cases, the way it's established is that this is also a social scene. And when you talk about blue zones and the social structure, if you're going down to the sauna, the same sauna a few times per week, and you're having conversations and opening up and getting to know people and building a good social structure, that's helping you live longer.
Absolutely. Going back to what you said previously, I mean, sauna and heat bathing generally are pretty powerful recovery tools as well, because they increase blood flow and they kind of expand things and relax your muscles and all that good stuff. But yeah, the social thing is huge, and also the mental side of it.
Yeah. Now, let's do the contrast of that. And it's going to cause restriction, constriction. It's
Shrinkage.
the cold.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the cold. I can tell you that I've never put myself into a cold bath, a cold pool. Everybody else went in, and I'm like, nope,
Wow.
not for me. Again, it was just one of those things of saying, I don't like the cold as it is, and I just got into something hot, and now you're saying jump into something cold. It fundamentally didn't make sense to me in the moment. So I've actually never
That's fair.
done any form of cold other
Wow.
than when the hot water is not working and I have to get a shower. I still have to get a shower, and I get the shower, but that's as close as it comes. I'm the stand there till the water warms up in the shower before I get in kind of guy.
A stunning admission.
There's a belief system that the cold helps just as
Yeah.
much as potentially the heat would.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, as far as we know, no. And, the science of cold exposure, and specifically cold water immersion, is not as well developed as the science of heat exposure, but it seems like a lot of the claimed benefits are not really as great as people think they are. So, for example, we just talked about strength training and recovery. So if you jump into a cold bath after a weight workout, you're kind of blunting any strength improvements you might see from that strength workout, because it blocks sort of the muscle protein synthesis, right? And that's been shown in a number of pretty good studies. That's like a really pretty solid finding about cold water exposure. Now, does it reduce inflammation? Probably. Does it have potentially, you jump in, well, you haven't done it, so I'll tell you, you jump in, and I don't love it myself. I have a chapter called The Case Against Cold Plunging, so people are going to go nuts about that. But you do feel kind of awake and charged up, and you feel like you did something difficult. So there's value in that. And there's especially value if you do it with a friend or, a loved one or whatever. It's a bonding experience because you're doing something insane. It could kill you, especially like for guys our age. You could have a quick heart attack, like if you do it and you're not ready, or you could drown if you're jumping into open water and you have this shock response and you suck in a big mouthful of water. It can be bad, right? So there's real dangers. I will say, though, since you told me you live in Panama, I like to use the cold plunge. My favorite way to use the cold plunge is here in Utah when it's like 95 degrees, sun beating down, in July. I'll go to my sauna place that I frequent, and it has a really nice cold plunge, and I'll just do the cold plunge. Where I'm going with this is it kind of brings your temperature back to equilibrium.
Yeah.
And I think that's its function in relation to the sauna. That's why the Finns use it. They just do it to cool off. I mean, it's not that complicated.
Well, I can see the same thing when you were talking about the heat stroke of when someone is suffering from a heat stroke, air conditioning is not going to be sufficient.
Not nearly.
Put them in the water, get some ice in there, get their core temperature down as quickly as you can. That's the best probability of survival is that situation of lowering your body temperature. This is a similar thing of, okay, it's a hot day and I'm going to feel refreshed jumping into the water. it's not so cold that it's going to stop my heart, but
Right. Right.
it's cold enough that it's going to chill and it's going to reduce my body temperature. I'll stay in just long enough to kind of get that done, and then I'm out, dried off,
Yeah.
and going on with my day.
Yeah. It's balancing. It counterbalances the heat. It lets you recover from the stress of the heat, if you will. And that's really all it is. It's like, it doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yeah. And if you like skiing and you like the outdoor sports in the cold weather, then you can do them. And I think there's probably some acclimation that can occur associated with colder weather too.
Oh, totally.
I don't want to experience that.
That's where we differ. See, I love that stuff. That's why I live in Utah. Like, I love skiing,
and I'm glad there's differences. I mean, it would be very boring if we were the same people.
Yeah,
but,
that's true.
So give me a sauna, give me a hot tub any day.
Right on.
Cold water. Okay, I'll just let my body naturally cool off.
So let me just take the pressure off you as someone in the health space. There is no requirement to cold plunge. And you certainly, even if you do cold plunge, you don't need to tell everybody about it.
Yeah. Well, apparently it's like CrossFit. You kind of do, I guess, but
you kind of do.
Okay. Were there any questions related to heat that you felt like maybe I should have asked that I didn't ask? Because I was just floored with some of the benefits and some of the things about this, and the fact that different modalities are still going to general. I mean, whether it's infrared or steam or whatnot, you could just find your favorite way that's available on a regular basis, and if you're doing this consistently, it is going to have positive health effects.
Yeah. In fact, I was in New York 2 weeks ago. I was with a bunch of people. We went to a Korean spa in New Jersey, and they had saunas there. So we trooped into these saunas, and it turns out they do it totally differently. It's just like a room with a carpet, and you lie down on the carpet with like your head on a wooden block, and you just kind of lie there. It's a totally different approach to the Finnish approach, but I'd never experienced before. An interesting area to maybe talk about is, the sauna research and some of this heat therapy research has touched on its effects on brain health, which I think are really interesting, especially as you get older. But these Finnish sauna studies found that frequent sauna users had a much lower rate of Alzheimer's disease over 20 years. Yeah. And that has been repeated actually in some other studies. So makes you think that there's something there. And it might have to do with increased blood flow to the brain, or it might have to do with some other mechanism, but it's a pretty interesting finding.
I would be curious if they could take the confounders out of the fact that there's also a heavy social structure. And they're having conversations. They're not just sitting there quietly by themselves. They're actually conversing with people and interacting with people on a consistent basis. How much of that might be part of it as well. And I think that's, again, where all this kind of comes together, is you can have protocols, and they probably are really good for you. But if you can turn them into social aspects as well, then you're getting multiple benefits from the same activity. That's even better. And that was one of the things I really enjoyed about the stories, was that your stories always involve, they start out with the suck, but they always involve a relationship, a conversation, someone you talk to, where be it the Turtle Boys or the Sauna Bros or whatever. I forget the exact words you use for those guys, but it's like that you just met these very interesting people and told their stories as they were doing these things. And you're like, okay, I could see meeting someone like that, and they would be just fascinating. So I really do think there's a social structure to this. It's not just I'm getting hot for the sake of getting hot.
I kind of came into it from this perspective of, science and health optimization, and then these sort of interactions and connections just sort of naturally occurred and developed. And, through reporting this book, I made numerous friends along the way. And that has not always happened in the past. And I think the heat does something to kind of, like any kind of extreme experience, like you get through it and you're kind of like, you're less inhibited and you want to share it with somebody. I don't know.
You even mentioned that at one point. It's just, you found that like when people were going in there, they were just talking. And it was like, it just felt like, okay, everybody just wants to open up, and they're talking about things that you would think, okay, I just met you 30 seconds ago and you're telling me about your divorce. And, But
Might be too much for some people. But yeah.
it could be, but it's just one of those things of if this could be better than therapy when it's all said and done, if it's your thing, if you like, you get in there and you're able to relax and basically allow your body to heal. And if this
Yeah.
heat's helping that happen, all the better. But it's just the social aspect of a lot of it. I found a lot of this very, very fascinating.
Yeah. And these social saunas are turning out to be quite popular in New York City, of all places. So you can go to there are these spots around town. One's called Othership. There's another one called Bathhouse, and kind of find yourself talking to and maybe getting a date with the person next to you.
Yeah, some of them for sure.
Depending. It's not always about that. I don't want to suggest that.
Yeah.
But they have these, there's like social sauna is like kind of a whole movement, and not just in the States, but in the UK as well. And, for my introverts out there, beware, but, it's not going to hurt you to talk to somebody. I'm kind of introverted myself.
I definitely am. But
sometimes.
Well, Bill, I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are 3 strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
I'm going to give you some curveballs. Okay. Okay. This one isn't a curveball. So 1, lean into discomfort, meaning the thing that you kind of think you don't want to do is maybe the thing you ought to be doing. And so that was the case with heat in my situation. It was something that I'd never really been attracted to till I found out I was. Or it could be strength training. It could be endurance work. It could be eating vegetables, whatever. Lean into discomfort. Okay. Number 2, eliminate one bad thing. It could be your second pack of cigarettes. It could be your third glass of wine. It could be a friendship or a relationship that is dragging you down in some way. Whatever it is, it could be French fries. What's the thing? It could be dessert every night. What's the thing that's kind of holding you back from achieving your goals? And can you cut that one thing out? It doesn't have to be everything, right? It's not about being perfect right now. It's like that one thing. I work on that all the time. And then the last thing, gravity is your friend. Lifting things, carrying things, and especially going up and down hills or stairs. Stairs are amazing. Every longevity doctor or longevity scientist that I know, they never take the elevator. They take the stairs. So discomfort, one bad thing, gravity. That's my recipe.
Well, thank you, Bill. I love every one of those. So thank you for that. If someone wanted to learn more about you and learn more about your book, Hotwired, where would you like for me to send them?
Yeah, I'm on the usual social media platforms at Bill Gifford. The book is available from your local bookstore, ideally, or from Amazon or the usual Barnes & Noble, usual retailers.
Well, thank you. And Bill, thank you so much for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Thanks, Alan. I'll be a dedicated listener.
Thank you. If you enjoyed today's show, take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you would, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Scott Fulton and discuss his book, Function: Turn Your Blind Spots into Strengths. Until then, have a happy and healthy week.